Howdy, fellow vine trippers. I wanted to take just a moment before the show starts to let you know about a great website called Texas Wine Lover. They can be found at txwinelover.com. And they have a comprehensive website that can become your go-to site for information on Texas wines, winemakers, and the wineries that can be found in this state. They even have a phone app that you can download, and that will help you plan your route to create your own wine trip. So make sure and check them out at txwinelover.com. Welcome to Texas Under Vine, an exploratory podcast to scout out the best that Texas wine country has to offer. I'm your wine guide, Scott, and I'm here to lead you on an auditory expedition to the vineyards and wineries across the great Lone Star State. Each episode will cover a different vineyard, winery, or wine-related business operating in Texas. You'll hear interviews, descriptions, and details about each location that will excite you to visit and experience them for yourself. Ready to plan a wine tour? Use these episodes to choose the most interesting spots for you and your friends to check out. Most of all, enjoy hearing about the rapidly growing wine industry in the state and what makes our wines and wineries the best. Howdy, fellow vine tripper. Welcome to episode 18 for Texas Under Vine. Today, I was able to go to the Texas Hill Country and experience a vineyard with California roots, but that is establishing new Texas roots after a move. It's a newer winery called Serrano Wine. So this winery is actually owned by Bryce and Sarah Garrett. They started making wines on a family vineyard for 7 years in Paso Robles. They came on a trip to the Texas Hill Country and fell in love with this area. So they decided to move here and continue their wine journey on a piece of property near High, Texas. They've moved on to this current property in 2021. They started doing tastings from a barn on their site, actually in late 2022. So as of the time of this podcast, they've been open to tastings for about 9 months or so. They're currently working on their vineyard, and they're going to source Texas grapes for their wines. Their current tastings are a mix right now. Some of them are current Texas wines, but they also have them alongside some of their past vintages from their Paso Robles winemaking days. Going forward here in Texas, they plan to still provide some wines from their heritage in Paso Robles as a tribute to where they came from, but to have many more Texas offerings as well. And so it's kind of a fun experience to get the tasting there of both Paso Robles offerings next to the Texas offerings and kind of compare the differences. The name Serrano does not come from the pepper, as we Texans probably immediately associate it with. I know I did. It comes actually from the Spanish word for mountain. So while you might find hints of spice in your tasting profiles on their wines, there are no peppers involved. Being so new, although they can handle walk-ins for tastings, they do prefer appointments and reservations in order to accommodate your group, make sure that they provide the best experience possible given their limited seating that they have currently. Bryce and Sarah live on the property, so 7 days a week, if you make a reservation, they're going to work with you to give you a tasting and a personal experience with the actual winemakers themselves. So recently, I was able to make a trip out to High, and I got a chance to sit down and visit with Bryce about their journey so far and their plans for Serrano wine here in the Texas Hill Country. Unfortunately, Sarah was feeling a bit under the weather, so we didn't get to hear from her, but let's hear a little bit from Bryce about their story. I'm here with Bryce Garrett at Serrano Wine. And I want to know a little bit about what got you into the wine industry.
So I absolutely stumbled into this. Long story short, I met my wife in college at Swanee, Tennessee, and I needed a summer job. So unbeknownst to me, her mom had a little bit of vineyard in Paso Robles, California. Went out, I worked in the vineyard some, did a lot for a nearby custom crush facility as far as barrel work, just really kind of basic cellar out procedures. We went back for our senior year, and I spent that entire year trying to convince her that she wouldn't ruin her life by not going into corporate banking, and that going into wine wasn't the easy way out because we had a familiar connection. So we went out officially in 2015. We gave it a go and discovered Sarah's got a phenomenal palate. So she lost about half of her hearing when she was 10, and because of that, she's developed extra taste buds. So one to the point, Doritos are spicy. So it's incredibly hard to cook for Sarah, but she's got a great palate. And, you know, we just started playing with wines and self-teaching and working at other facilities and realized she had a knack for it. And we started making wine in small batches and wanted to make it approachable and easy for a millennial consumer. And all it kind of blew up from there.
So tell me a little bit about this location's history. So you started there in Paso Robles. Now you're opening up this spot here in High, right here in the middle of the wine country. So tell me a little bit about that story.
Yeah, no, we made wine in Paso Robles for 7 years, but always kind of knew that Paso probably wasn't our forever home. We grew up in the Southeast, Georgia and Florida, respectively, and we wanted to get a little bit closer. We wanted to do something different. So we started looking early pandemic, where we could expand, what we could do. And one of the first places we visited was the Hill Country. Very early on, we reached out to a handful of different winemakers, and the first person who got back to us actually wasn't a winemaker, but it was Amy Nemec, who previously owned Perspective Cellars, and she, of course, is the Yellow Pages of the Hill Country, and introduced us to everyone. We met our real estate agent, Bobby Humphreys, who's now a co-owner of Six Twist in Fredericksburg, Champagne Bar, and they all worked together to get us out here as quickly as possible. So we started making a few Texas wines in the transitional phase, moving from Paso to here. We officially moved onto this property November of 21, after having it for a little bit. And, it took us a little bit of time to get our bond situation and all of our compliance straight, but we started doing tastings out of the barn about 6 months ago. So we're right now pouring a combination of Texas and some of our old Paso Robles production.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about the name of your location, Serrano. Of course, here in Texas, we probably immediately think of the pepper. Where did you come up with the name Serrano and why?
So Serrano is the Spanish term for someone of the mountains. And, I mentioned us going to school at Swanee, which is up on the Cumberland Plateau. So we thought of ourselves as Highlanders in a sense. Our first home in Paso Robles was actually on a street called Vista Serrano Way, and we started picking that apart, and I eventually proposed on a ski slope, and we decided, mountains are a big part of who we are and what we do, that every vintage has its peaks and obviously valleys, and we can look at that in life as well. So Serrano is really just someone of the mountains, and best we can tell, the pepper was found in the Andes, so it's a pepper of the mountains.
In this area with Tex-Mex being what it is, you can probably highlight, people are going to like, ooh, Serrano pepper, I like that. So
we've had pretty funny success with that already. A lot of people are like, oh, the pepper. And we're like,
so where all do you source all of your grapes?
So right now, our Texas production, we've got Montepulciano from Jet Wilmoth's vineyard up in the High Plains. We have a sparkling orange muscat that's fermented to dry, and a Roussan, both from Farmhouse Vineyards. So that's our current bottled production. Moving forward, we're going to continue sourcing from both Jet and the Seatons and Fergusons of Farmhouse. We're getting some fruit from Ready Vineyards. We're on a couple waiting lists as well. It's, we want to expand, do some stuff from the Davis Mountains. We want to play with Mason County and Hill Country, obviously, but I think we brought the California drought with us. So it's been hard to find fruit.
I've heard that that's kind of a big deal right now, is that there's just not enough fruit in Texas to make the demand that's needed. So
it is. And it's tough because there's the pull of some people want to see 100% Texas and other people just want to see wine. And we're really fortunate because we do have some Paso Robles production that we still have. And we feel moving forward, we'll always keep a small percentage of that. That's where we cut our teeth. And it kind of opens the door for us to be about 80% Texas wine as far as what we're going to produce. But then why not source from a few other areas? The cool thing about Hill Country, and I really think it's probably the only place in the world we can do this, you can taste South African and French and Texas and California and Oregon all within a 15-minute drive. And it's really challenging the winemakers out here to continually learn and up their game. And we're excited to be a part of that. Really, as Texas continues to develop, that percentage might even grow higher. Our state is larger than the country of France. And, it's, if you were to explain to a Burgundian winemaker that you're buying grapes 6 hours away, I mean, I shudder to think what they would say, but that's what we can do in our state. So as we continue to plant and find viable rootstocks and things that work in Texas, I feel more people will focus on primarily Texas grapes. We just need a handful more lucky farmers.
Do you have any plans to do any vines here on your site, any estate vines or things like that?
We do. So we're talking to a couple nurseries now about planting next year. I think we want to really focus on white varieties here, specifically white Rhônes, Viognier, Marsanne, Roussanne. Those are just grapes that we're comfortable with. We studied a little bit in the Northern Rhône in the past and learned how to make wine from there. But also, there's just a lot of good inspiration around us in the Hill Country, and winemakers and cellar guys and vineyard owners saying these grapes should do really well here. Trust your instinct.
Where do you process all of your grapes once you get them? Where are you doing custom crush with somebody or?
So right now we're custom crushing at Horn Winery just down the street from us. It's a really great setup. We're pretty good friends with the winemaker there, and he set up the custom crush agreement where we can go in and do our own work. That's a big part for Sarah and I. We like to be involved in every step of the way, to the point we're looking at buying our own truck this year so we can transport our own fruit as well. So we have had a pretty good setup over there so far.
And do they provide barrel space for you and all that as well?
Yeah. So we rent barrel space every month. When we need to rent out a tank, there's a price for that. They have an in-house bottling line, press, destemmer, pretty much entire crush setup. It's probably one of the hidden gems that we found so far.
And then do you have plans to eventually build out your own processing facility and everything here?
That's the long-term goal. It's a struggle. Our parents are always, what's your 5-year plan? And I'm like, I don't know what we're doing 5 weeks from now. It's your farming and viticulture. It's, all up in the air. But ideally we would like to have a small facility out here with a more proper tasting room in time. As Amy Nemick likes to say, we're self-funded. So we're trying to just build it all slowly so it doesn't get too far ahead from us.
What are your favorite wines that you make?
Right now I'm really leaning towards the Roussanne. That was probably, actually, no, I know for a fact, it was the only wine in Serrano's history where I wasn't a part of the process. So we were in the midst of our move, and Sarah said, I'm flying out to the high plains, and I'm going to pick this fruit, and we're going to drive it down and produce it, and you're going to load the dogs up and start packing up the house, and we're going to move immediately after. So it's a little cheeky, but I like to feel that this wine was made for me. Granted, she does get onto me for drinking it too much, but no, I'm really happy with the way Sarah made this wine. All of our white wines we barrel ferment, leave in French oak, most of the time new, occasionally once or twice barrels. But we leave it in the barrel for a full year and stir it on those fermentation lees weekly. So it's a really creamy, round mouthfeel. And with Texas heat, this is kind of my answer. So it's refreshing while also having some depth to it.
Kind of the same question from a different perspective. So with customers who come in to taste your wines, well, what have been the hot sellers? What have been the ones that people are like, wow, this is really great?
We feel like every week there's a different seller that's jumping off. A lot of people have been really happy with the Monty we got from Jet. Of course, it's easy for me to sell the Roussanne. But, we've seen a lot of our clientele will come and buy one and one, meaning they'll grab a Syrah from Paso Robles and maybe the Roussan out of Texas, or the Monty and our Viognier from Paso. And it's, I don't know if we've had enough open weekends to get good data to say what people are really going for.
So as you grow, I mean, you've already got the outside space out there and you're building and working on this one, trying to get it completed. But as you grow, do you plan to have different types of amenities out here, or events, attractions? What do you envision?
For the most part, we are looking to be appointment preferred, meaning if we have space, we would love to pour for you. Our biggest bit to winemaking is the sharing aspect. So we always want to have an opportunity to sit with you. And that's why we have a dining table in here and another in the barn. And these little rooms that we're building out, we want to create that intimate space. But off that, we do want to have a couple club member parties a year and a few releases and maybe some winemaker dinners. I will say there's a couple good artists we have in mind. I did get to work at Prospective Cellars in that down period, waiting on our bond to go through. And fortunately, we met a lot of talented individuals in the Hill Country.
You mentioned your wine club. Tell me a little bit about that.
Pretty straightforward. We're twice a year, 3, 6, or 12, all red or mix. And because it is just Sarah and I, we put things together and we try to have a working relationship with our customers. So if, Jonathan texts me and says, hey, I can't do Grenache. I see it's coming up in the club, but I just detest this grape. We work within that. We try to always give a good representation of what we're doing. And it's going to be a mix of our old Paso stuff while we still have that, and our new Texas wines as we feather them in. And I will say we're quite excited. We just ran our spring club, and a lot of our California members will be receiving Texas wines for the first time ever next week. So we're going to see if we can branch out and, share the love of Texas wine. The thing we keep telling them, the reason you haven't seen Texas wine is Texas loves it so much, and it doesn't escape the state.
We've got a listener. They're starting to get interested. They want to come check the place out. So let's walk through what somebody needs to do if they want to come do a tasting and check you guys out. Well, what does that process look like?
So we're very open in a lot of different ways. There's the contact us on our website, and of course the phone number, which we text, we pick up calls. That work line is always active. Our social media is another big piece too. So may it be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you can message us and one of us is going to respond within 5 to 10 minutes. And if we have an opening, we'll happily pour for you. And that's 7 days a week as well. We do have wine work here and there, and we'll bottle, and there are a few days we're just not on site. But since we do live on the property, if we have an opening, we're always happy to take somebody.
Are there specific, you said 7 days a week, are there specific hours within that you try to operate within to make appointments?
We try not to do a tasting starting past 5:30.
So during a tasting, what are the wines look like? Is it a specific flight of wines? Do you change that up at all? Or what are they going to taste when they come in?
So right now, we're doing a split flight, 2 whites, 4 reds. So we pour our Texas Roussan and then the California Viognier, and we can really kind of geek out and talk about same barrel practices, same type of grape in a sense, and really talk about, the differences of vine age and how Texas is on the right path. And, once we get a little more root stability and some growth, that, in my opinion, some of these white grapes are going to turn out to be much better than what we saw on the central coast of California. Then we have our Montepulciano from Texas, and the last 3 are Paso Robles red wines. We've got a couple other reds we're going to bottle probably early fall. We like to leave our barrels as full as long as possible. But then upon request, we do have a sparkling we made in Paso, and then our Texas bubbles as well. And we like to share as much as we can legally. So we won't be too skimpy.
So you still have a few sources there in Paso that you're getting. I know you mentioned that a little bit, but you're still planning on keeping that pipeline open.
Yep, we are. So we really have a lot of good friends still in the Paso Robles area. This year, we're going to do 100% Texas harvest. unless something screaming comes at us. But we're planning to pick up Paso Robles again in the 24 vintage. And then, again, kind of that 80-20 breakdown.
So fees involved for doing tasting?
So we do a $20 tasting fee. We waive it for a 2-bottle purchase. Kind of straightforward and easy. We don't want it to get too out of hand. That was a problem we did see in the Central Coast. Tasting fees are $40, $50. And you needed to join the club or take home 6 bottles. And, we thought that was just not very consumer friendly. That's kind of a big piece of what we like to market is wine is fun, and good wine doesn't have to come off snobby in a sense. So we want to keep our prices and our fees pretty reasonable.
What about for a tasting, if a listener has kids or family friendly, they can't get a sitter, are their kids allowed, or how does that work?
Right now we do. We do ask that dogs stay on leashes just because, insurance and liabilities. And we're also pretty kid friendly at the moment. We want to be open and welcoming to everyone. We understand that situations do arise and you have to bring a child with you. And within reason, we're okay with that.
So if somebody wants to come do a tasting, do you have a maximum size for those groups? What do you recommend?
Right now, I would probably say our limit's about 12 to 14 comfortably. This summer, we're planning on building out a deck with sun sails and shading and, pieces like that. But right now, our tables really can't hold that much.
What are your have you seen so far what your busier, slower seasons are? What's the best time for somebody to come do that tasting with you?
I don't know if there's enough hard data on it just yet. We've been pouring since September. Midweek is almost always open. We typically have a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a couple on Thursday, always around. Our busier days are, of course, Friday through Sunday. But since we are on site, our commute's pretty easy. So it, almost whenever works for us.
Do you do any kind of distribution at all? So if somebody couldn't come out here for whatever reason, is there a way that they can taste your wine?
So in the past, we had out-of-state distribution, and it's something we are working pretty hard on. We feel more and more consumers should see the good of Texas. Right now, though, we only have a few accounts within the state. Most recently, Cabernet Grill picked us up. They have both our Montepulciano and our Roussan, and prospective sellers picked up our Montepulciano last night. So that was another feather in cap moment.
So plans for future growth. What's your overall vision of kind of what steps you want to take or what you want to see Serrano become?
There's a couple people we want to emulate from Paso Robles. There's actually a handful of couples who've inspired us to stay small. So, we had the opportunity to really expand and bring on a handful of employees and investors, and we're really happy we didn't do that. So Sarah and I really feel when we can't remember all of our wine club members' names, that's when it's time to cap it. We, of course, want as much business as we can, but we also want to be able to enjoy our time with the consumer and sit and share. And, we've seen it happen in Paso. There was high tasting fees and very little attention given to the customer. And we don't want that to happen in Texas. We want to kind of continue the trend of really sharing a great experience. So for us, we want to keep it fairly small. We don't know what that number is yet. We're 30, so we still have lots of good energy. So we'll see where that goes.
And then you're gonna think about planting vines, think about production facility. You talked about the deck with the sales. So just kind of expanding that a little bit, but keeping it intimate for the people that come in.
So our overall goal is, especially in this space, we'll finish out the tasting room itself. We're going to trench power to the barn so we can also have that as almost a setup where if a group wanted to come and, let's say, watch Texas game on a Saturday, they could rent out that space, bring in their own food, buy a couple bottles, hang out. The decks in the courtyard, we want to make it where if we are booked with appointments and you show up, we can offer you a bottle or a glass while we wait. We want to, really be accommodating, but keep it fairly manageable.
So what, in your opinion, is the number one thing that sets Serrano wine apart from all these other places that would inspire a customer or listener to come in and visit?
So at Serrano, you're always going to taste with the winemaker. May it be Sarah or myself, we're very hands-on. We do all of the production and bottling. We've been in picks, and we like to share that story. We want to share with you why we make wines the way that we do and how our journey has changed our production style. So we really strive to give that intimate experience and build a relationship with our customer base.
So if you're looking for a personalized experience at a winery, you can't go wrong with Serrano Wine. They're focused on being present with their consumers for the tastings and to share their journey through wine with those who come to visit. For most of these interview opportunities and visits that I make to the different wineries and wine destinations, I usually allow about 2 hours at the wine destination site to do a tasting, the interview, and just to really take in the location. However, after I looked at my watch, I spent over 4 hours just hanging out and drinking wine with Bryce and some other fun people that I met who came to do a tasting while I was there. It's definitely a very welcoming atmosphere. It will grow to be an amazing wine destination on the 290 Wine Trail as they add even more amenities and Texas wines to their site. As Bryce said, they're building, they're adding on more. So don't let the fact that they're new or that they don't have as much seating at the moment take you away from going and checking them out. It's really a fun place to go, and they're going to take care of you while you're there. When you do decide to make a visit, make sure that you first check out their website. It's serranowine.com. That's serranowine.com. Make sure to take some time and while you're there to read Bryce and Sarah's story, as well as check out some of the wines that they offer, and even they have details about their wine club on the website. You can even find out on their website how to make an appointment online, or as Bryce said in the interview, you can always call them as well ahead of your visit. They'll answer the phone, or if you leave a voicemail, they'll get right back to you to make those appointments. Don't forget, when you go see them, make sure and tell them you heard about them on this podcast, Texas Under Vine. Well, after a long afternoon of drinking great wine, by the way, I really loved their Montepulciano. I made that my library bottle for this episode. However, it's time for me to move on to other fun wine destinations to bring you other great news. So if you're enjoying the show, would you consider becoming a supporter of the show? For just a few dollars a month, you could become a Patreon of the show and get access to other materials like photos and videos at each destination. Just go to texasundervine.com, click the patron link at the top of the page. And I'd like to, while I'm doing this, thank my latest supporter, Stephen R. You help make it possible for me to travel to even more wine destinations all over the great state of Texas. Well, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, follow my socials to be notified whenever the next episode is posted. And until next time, as always, happy trails and bottoms up, y'all. Thanks for listening to Texas Under Vine. We strive to provide you with the best information about wine businesses all over Texas. Be sure to check out our website at texasundervine.com and follow us on our socials at Texas Under Vine to stay up on all the upcoming episodes. Please email us with any suggestions or feedback. Also, contact us if you're interested in donating, sponsoring, or advertising on the podcast, just to help us cover our expenses and bring even more great info to you in future episodes. Above all, travel safely, and most especially, drink responsibly. Don't forget to also check out the Texas Wine Lover website and their phone app. If you want to plan a trip to the wine destination I talked about in this episode, the site for Texas Wine Lover and their phone app that you can download will really help you organize a trip so you can go see them. You can check out all of the goodness that I got to experience while I was there. But as you're planning your trip, while you're on their website or their app, you can also find out things like accommodations, restaurants, and even some fun events and things that are going on at the wineries, and maybe even find one that you want to experience as part of your wine trip that you never even expected. So check them out. Again, it's txwinelover.com.